Dr. Wimberly, one of the points you really stressed with us today in your lecture was that while we might define the gross majority of black youth as disconnected from church, they still look to the church with hope and yearning that the church would bear up its responsibility to help. And as you asked them, you worked them through, where did they think the church had a lot of responsibility for helping them deal with their lives? What did you find in response to those questions?
Well, the findings are absolutely stunning. And I just want to share it from their perspective so we get clearly what they are saying to the church and what they're trying to emphasize in terms of the importance of the church's responsibility for helping them in their everyday lives. There were 8 issues that these young people targeted. And these issues were grief, death, sadness. The second, suicide thinking and attempts, spiritual life, substance abuse and drugs, crime and violence, family issues, school and educational issues, and racism. But what I want to target here are the top 3, because 73% of these youth in the study said that the church bears a lot of responsibility for helping them deal with grief, sadness, and death. 69% said that the church bears a lot of responsibility for helping them deal with suicide and suicide attempts. Now, when I looked at those 2, I could hardly believe what I was reading. And I had to go back because I thought maybe these data are wrong. And I wanted to recalculate. And when I recalculated, it was correct. And my heart broke. And it's difficult talking about it without tearing up. Because here we are with grief and suicide, grief and sadness, grief and death, and suicide thinking and attempts. Now understand the reason for grief and sadness and death. Because at this point, we know today we're dealing with the killing of our young men by police. We're dealing with racial strife like we haven't seen since before the Civil Rights Movement. We're dealing with all kinds of violence within the community. Our young people are seeing peers who are dying because of violence. We are seeing violence not just in our community, but outside of it and all over the world. And our young people are faced with family issues, school communities, school to prison pipeline, incarceration, and so on. And so there's a lot that they're facing. So I understand the problem of grief and sadness and death. But suicide has not been a historical part of Black life. And so for this to be the part listed by 69% of our young people is beyond belief. And then I looked at that third one, which said 65% said that the church, they're looking to the church to bear a lot of responsibility in helping them with spirituality. And what that says to me is they're counting on the church to give them a spiritual anchor and some spiritual guidance to deal with that overwhelming grief and sadness and death and suicide attempts, to help them through the woes and the difficulties of life in which really they're backed up against the wall.